Hello guys, this is Himanshu. Welcome to the first class of React. So React is no more a new framework. It's been in the market for 5 years. Most of the new products are adopting it already. Old legacy products are also getting shifted to it. So what's the hype about it? Why is React getting so popular? So there are multiple reasons for it. One is simplicity, that you don't have to switch between multiple languages to write any framework. So a new component only JS will do. Only the basics of HTML, CSS is what you need to know. But the main feature that really sold React to me was the shadow DOM feature. So if I have to explain it in very lame words, it's more like React maintains a shadow object of the DOM, and whenever a component tries to update the DOM, it first checks with the shadow DOM. If the value has really changed, then only it will go and update the DOM. This is unlike Angular, where if you try to put the same value to a modeled element, it will go ahead and end up updating the DOM. Okay, so we'll not waste any more time on the theory, and because the first class will not waste any more time in setting up the project also, so we'll use a utility tool to basically set up the React folder for us. So Google is the best friend for me, to be honest. So I'll search for npm create React app. This is the one that we'll use to set up the React app first. So because I already have it, you can do it using npm React app. I'll directly jump to getting started, and you'll see how to use it. So let me go to my personal space. So today I'll build a very simple app, nothing complex. It's just a button that'll say surprise me, and if I click on it, I'll keep getting new images. Okay, nothing else, nothing very fancy. So I'll name the same. Oh yeah, so I forgot that we cannot have any capital characters in our names no more. Okay, so finally it's installed. You can see there are multiple commands directly showing me to that I can start with. npm start to start the development server, npm run build to basically build the static files for the production, test to test it. So first let's enter into it. So you can see it's very detailed. It tells me exactly what to do. First thing I'll do is install all the dependencies, or actually npm start will do it for me. Okay, it's still starting the server. This is so sometimes. Yeah, so you can see it has started the server and it has hosted it on localhost 3000 or my network IP. So you can see it's there. Now let's see the code for it. Okay, so even though we have used a utility tool to create a React folder app, but it doesn't mean we will not go ahead and explore the folder. So first thing we'll go is see the package JSON. So you can see all the commands it was showing me. These are the React scripts that will be running in the background for the same thing. So as a thumb rule, the first thing we'll open is index.html for any website. So you can see there are many headers. I can see the metadata telling what type of HTML it's coming, which encoding format we have used. There's a shortcut icon. Then this is needed to make it responsive. Then there are other theme colors and manifest. And here's the title for our app. Let's change it. And you can see in the body we have only one thing. No scripts needed when the JavaScript not available. But you can see there is only one div. So where is it getting used? So next point that we'll go to is index.js, and you will see React DOM is rendering everything that is there in the app component to the element that we have in our index. So there is only one root element that we are going to have, and React is taking care of everything that we'll see on the web. Sorry. So let's go app. You can see here what we were seeing. It was just the symbol, a text, and a link. Exactly what we have here. So you can see there's an image, there is a text, and then there is a link. The classes, so how CSS is applied here, there are multiple ways. One is that whichever component you are writing, you can have the CSS along with it. The other way is you can have styles object here, and that's what you can import in the app, but it's the first class. I'll not confuse with all that. Let's just follow one. We'll have a CSS file. You can see app logo was rotating, it had an animation, and this is where we have defined the animation. But we don't need all this. All need is basically a folder that is taking my whole body, and it has an image as well as a button. So first thing I'll do is remove all the extra CSS that's of no use. Here I'm just used to putting everything to flex first because yeah, flex is life nowadays. Then I need width. I want to take the whole of the viewport. I could have used 100% also. Okay, so I'm all set. Let's see what gets shown here now. Okay, let's start the server. Okay, I forgot to save. That would have been shocking. So you can see now there's nothing. So we need two things. First thing is we need a place from which I can get random images. So again, I'll go to my best friend Google. URL for random images. Normally the first link. Okay. So it's showing me that I can use this. And every time I refresh, will I get no? Okay. So let's copy the whole thing. And we can guess that the width and the height. I need a good size image. 1920, 1080, normal HD is what we'll have. Okay, so it's a server URL that's just giving me the serial. So if I just keep changing this, yeah, so we have got our random function now. So you can see there is an app. I forgot to tell you this. So this app component is what's getting rendered here. So first thing we'll do is we just write a function that will give me a random URL. So cat random URL. One thing to make note of in React is by default make this a habit that you're always using arrow functions, because arrow functions make sure that the scope is not getting changed. We'll end up calling these functions from somewhere in the app or in the render. That time the scope may be gone. Okay, so you don't have to bind it explicitly, always go for the arrow function. So now this we have to get a random number. How can I generate a random number? I will just do math.random, and I am trusting that they will have at least 300 images. Let's see if it fails. Now this will be a float, better round it. Okay. Now what do I need? I need an image tag. Where I'll give the source as what I'll get from this function. So let's declare it as a variable. Let URL is equal to, I'm doing it the wrong way first, and then I'll teach you the right way. We'll assign it a value. Always give an alternate, so it is surprise Then we have the closing of it. We need one more thing. We need a button. Okay, but anyway, let's see first whether it works. One will give the width as 100%. Okay, so let's remove this warning also. Or you can see every time I'm reloading, there's a new image. Awesome. But obviously, I don't want to create a page where people have to reload basically to do this. So let's do it with the button. So I have the button, I have the function, I have a way of getting a random URL. But now comes basically where to call this. This is not the right way. That at the render I'm having this function called where I'm getting the random URL always. Instead of that, I need a function on which when I click, I'll get this random URL and somehow it should change my UI also. So this is where the use of state comes into picture. So to be honest, if you really want to learn React, there are only 2 and 3 things that you need to completely get your grasp on. So first is there are two types of component. One is functional, one is class component. What we have used here is a class. The functional component doesn't have a state of its own. You'll get to know why and when later. Okay, when we have the second session on this. Second is the use of state and props. So props are the mean to transfer data from parent to child in React, and state is a mean to basically get the data and get your actions transferred into your render. So if you change anything to the state, it will directly get triggered and render will be called, and wherever you are using that state variable, those components will automatically be updated. This is the way the data binding is happening in React. So we'll create a function first. Surprise me. Okay, this function will not be taking anything. What I'll be doing is, first thing that I want is, now I don't want to use this variable anymore. I want this to come from state. So there are multiple ways of defining state in React. If first thing is we have to do it in the constructor, but now because I'm not doing anything else in the constructor apart from basically declaring the state, I can directly write state as this, and I'll say URL is initially blank. Okay, so it'll show me the alt. Now this cat random URL function I'll be calling here. And I'll be calling this .setState function, setting the URL. There's a mistake I am doing, and then I'll tell you what's a mistake. There's a difference between how you write listeners in the HTML to how you write listeners in the React. So basically there you have to call the function or call the action, whatever you're supposed to do on click. Here you have to pass the function. React will take care of calling it whenever the event happens. So the function that I want to call here is this dot surprise me. Okay, so make sure you don't end up doing this, because otherwise the first time this render gets called, this function will be called and everything that's supposed to happen will happen. You want it to happen when you click on it and not when you're rendering it. Now this button, I don't want it to be coming randomly anywhere on the screen, so I'll give it a class. And let's give CSS for it. What I want is the position should be absolute, and it should be hang in the middle. So first thing is the parent will just say justify content center, and from the bottom I want it to be like 10 VH high. One thing you'll notice here is I'm giving position absolute to this, but I have not still defined the position in my app, that is the parent to this, because anyway the next parent to it is the body, so it will not make a difference, but still to be safe we'll just write position grid, and I'll give some padding to it, something like 10 px. I think that should do. Let's see. Oh, here it's not defined. Oh yeah, of course, I forgot to change that. So now we'll be using state for it. Let's see what happens. Now just remember I told you there's a mistake. You see, only when I click on this button is when I'm getting the image. But if I'm refreshing, I don't see the image. I see the alt that I've given for it, right? This is because now we'll have to look into the third important thing that I left, that is the lifecycle method. So first that I told is you need to understand where do you have to use the class component and the functional component. This I'll be covering in detail in the next one. Second is the use of states and props, that I did cover a little. Third is the lifecycle methods. So everything has their lifecycle method. Let's directly see the diagram for it. So again, going to my best friend Google. So basically, like most of the frameworks, you will see React also has three. One is, I'm sorry, yeah. So if you can see now, so React also has three life cycles. One is mounting, one is updating, one is unmounting. A mounting is basically when it's first time coming to your screen in the name word if I have to say. So first thing obviously they'll be called is constructor. Then there is a function called get derived state from props. I'll not tell you the use of it here right away. Then we have the render, and then we have component did mount, basically when the mount is complete. Then update, there are two kinds of update. Either the props that are coming to that component are getting updated, or the state of that component is updated. So state, it's pretty simple. If the state updates, the render will get called. Okay, and then component did update obviously. So you can easily see the cycle. Whenever you do set state, should component update is something which basically if you want to put a check whether when this property is changing you don't want to get run at all, so just saving that call also, that is where you'll keep your things. Set update, otherwise we'll just trigger the render, and then you'll have this componented mount. Force update is something that you should never ever use unless and until you're really stuck somewhere. When the props are changing, this new props, basically this cycle, you will see this get derived states from prop is getting called. It is where you will basically get those prop and do the set state related changes if your state is dependent on props in any kind, but anyway this will get confusing. Unbound is pretty simple, component will unmount. So now let's come back to our code. So what we want to do now is when my component is getting mounted for the first time, I want to get a URL and I want to set the state for it. So what's the best place for it? Either I can do it in constructor or I can do it in get set state from prop, but that will get called anytime the state props are getting updated. Third is component did mount. Right now I'll call it here and I'll tell you why this is the main reason we should be calling. I'll just call the surprise me function because it's taking care of everything else. Surprise me will not be there. I'll have to call this dot surprise me. So there are multiple reasons of why you should be doing all the network related call and component did mount. First is the set state that you see here. It's written Basically, React works such a way that unless and until first time the render is called, the set state will not work. So any case, even if you are doing it in the constructor or if you are doing it just before the render, it will not take effect unless and until the render has executed the first time. So it's best to call it here. The second main reason is so that we don't write a code in which if my state is missing something, my app crashes. That's not so important. But the main reason is the set state will anyway not be called unless and until the first time render is executed. So let's see now what happens. Just to be sure. So you can see there is a page and it's working awesomely. Okay. So people, that's all I had for the first class of React. We may basically develop this app into something pretty awesome later if you want to see. I might have, okay, let's see. So this was a very simple app where we were just getting an image and on the click we were refreshing it. We can change this app into something really, really awesome in just 10 to 15 minutes. So I'll just show a glimpse of what I was trying with the same thing in upgraded form. So basically you can sign in, there's a refresh button. Based on which image has gotten more likes, they'll be covering more area. Whichever hasn't gotten less likes, they'll be covering less area. There's a button which you can click. And yeah, my internet is very slow today, so it will basically populate that. Yeah, so thank you people for joining. Let's catch up in the second class.